続いて本会合
Next, we would like to move on to plenary session number 2, Climate Action in Asia in the Decisive Decade. First, I would like to introduce the speakers. Tokyo University, Professor at the Institute for Future Initiatives at the University of Tokyo, Professor Yukari Takamura. She will be taking part online. And Director of the Energy Research Institute, Mr. Kejun Jang. And Mr. Kejun, his Wi-Fi is a little unstable. The Secretariat is trying to get him linked in. And the moderator going forward will be the Program Director, Climate and Energy Area of IJUS, Kentaro Tamura. So Tamura-san, would you like to go ahead?
So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining today. The plenary session 2, Climate Action in Asia in the Decisive Decade. This is Kentaro Tamura, the Program Director of Climate and Energy Area of IGS. As already moderator mentioned, we have two wonderful speakers today. One is Professor Jang Kejun, Director of Energy and Research Institute. He is a lead author of several Ipcc reports, and actually the one of the most influential researcher on energy and climate in China. And also, I'd like to welcome Professor Yukari Takamura at University of Tokyo. She serves as chair of the Central Environmental Council, the advisory body for the environmental minister. So I'm very much honored to be having these two distinguished speakers today. Yes, this is a 30-minute session. So first, I'm going to give a brief framing presentation, which provides some, which highlight some key findings of key message from IPCC report and also outcome of the COP26, and provide some context to this session. And after that, we move on to discussion session, where we pose two questions to the Professor Jang and Professor Takamura. That means your first. So what is the key message from the IPCC 6 assessment report for China, Japan, and other Asian countries? The second, what do the outcomes of COP26 mean for China, Japan, and other Asian countries? Okay, so then yeah, I'd like to move on to my framing presentation. Okay, so as you know that the IPCC, the latest report was just published in this summer. This report is very information rich. So, but I try to deliver some three key messages from that report. First, the report provided crystal clear conclusion that global warming, human influence causing global warming or climate change by warming the atmosphere, ocean, and land. Secondly, its report also concludes that human-induced climate change is already affecting many weather and climate extremes, such as heat wave, drought, and heavy rains in every region across the globe. And with every additional increment of global warming, changes in extreme continue to become larger. And lastly, thirdly, it also reaffirmed to limit human-induced global change or global warming to a specific level require reaching net zero CO2 emissions. And to limit global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, global CO2 emission need to be at net zero around 2050. So these three are kind of key message from this IPCC report. And also this related to the third message, we can find another key message or insight from this report. That means 2020 is a decisive decade for achieving Paris Agreement. This figure shows 5 indicative emission pathways assessed by IPCC. Now, as you can see, the bottom 2 emission pathways, these are compatible with 1.5 degree goal, or not, sorry, and also 2 degree, well below 2 degree goal. So this figure shows we need to peak out global CO2 warming as soon as possible, then reduce substantially by 2030. So acting now is critical to avoid any, carbon lock-in and heavy, energy-intensive industry or stranded asset, so on. So 2020s is a critical and decisive decade, which determine whether we can achieve Paris Agreement or not. So having these scientific findings, let's look at the outcome of COP26. And before and during COP26, many new net zero pledges are made. And also new and updated NDC, this is a national determined contribution, so emission reduction target by country, are also made. And so Glasgow Climate Pact, which was adopted at the COP26, the Pact stressed that the 2020 is a critical decade, and also resolved to pursue effort to achieve the 1.5 degree goal. And also the Pact recognized the need for action on fossil fuel, in particular phasing down of coal power and phasing out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. So we can find this progress. But even we have this kind of progress, there are some still kind of caveat. That means the emission level of pledge, net zero pledge of our NDC, are not adequate to achieve 1.5 degree yet. So that means there is a gap between pledge and goal. There is another gap. That means that most of these pledges, net zero pledge and NDC, are not backed by national legislation nor plan or action on the ground. That leads to another gap, a gap between pledge and action. So recognize these shortfalls. This Glasgow Climate Pact requested all parties to revisit and strengthen their 2030 emission reduction target by end of the next year. And also, parties are urged to submit mid-century net zero strategy to a just transition. Previously, it's called low carbon development strategy, but now it's called net zero strategy. So these are kind of a homework for the countries to do in the next year. So having these two kind of progress and some caveat, we'd like to move on to this discussion session. And I'd like to ask two sets of questions to the panelists. The first one is, what's the key message from IPCC report for China and Japan and the other Asian countries? So first, I'd like to ask Professor Zhang, how this IPCC report has been received in China, and what message receives a particular attention in China?
Okay, I can start now.
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kentaro-san. So it's a very good join such kind of events because I know Kentaro and other IGS colleagues joined the COP negotiation process for many, many years. Even we went there many times together. But this year is a very special year because for me, I think so far so good. And just before the COP, the G20 summit is also a very nice opportunity for us to talk about climate change issues, because by now, almost all the G20 countries are all commit to be carbon neutrality, something like in 2050 in China, before 2060, in India 2070. For me, the most important thing is the signal is very clear. And such kind of signal, maybe we can change the way of COP. In the future, maybe COP can work only as a working conference. So we make our so many commitment together, try to match with the Ipcc funding. Even though the Ipcc working group 1 report already released, but right now we are also working hard on the Ipcc working groups, working group 3 AR6 report. So SPM is nearly submit. So let's wait a little bit for the new message from the Ipcc AR6. But in order to answer Kentaro-san's questions, even for all the Ipcc process from AR3, third assessment report by 5th, especially the special report on 1.5 global warming report is very good for us. We start to say loudly for the 1.5 degree and what's the meaning for carbon neutrality in China. And I personally believe that the report have a strong influence on China's policymaking process. That's the reason why, for me, it's to announce the carbon neutrality target before 2060. Actually, in China, many research institutes carefully look at what happened for the Ipcc funding and try to guide our research topic to match with the global commitment. For example, in the Paris Agreement, what we can do with the 2 degree and well below 2 degree and then 1.5 degree. So far, that's for me, it's a quite good message from Ipcc process, and we are also looking for the AR6 fundings very soon from Working Group 2 and Working Group 3. I believe they can have, again, a very strong influence on all the country. We work together for the Paris Agreement targets. For China and also for many Asian countries, I'm quite excited for what happened right now. Even though still some ways that to push earlier carbon neutrality or earlier peaking for me, but that doesn't matter because we have to look for what's the policy now, not the long-term policy. For me, the most important is what's the actual working today and maybe next year. So far, for this year, what happened in China, just after China announced the target for carbon neutrality and peaking year before 2030, China's policy is going to the perfect direction. For example, the first thing we did is about the trading regime for green electricity. So all the provinces, cities, and industry, they can buy electricity what they want. The second policy is we really give the pricing for the off-peaking load and the peaking load, the difference. Then they make this very feasible for pumped hydropower and even for the coal-fired power plant to do the peaking load power generation. That means in a very short term, we make it feasible for large amount of green power can come in to the consuming market. Number three, just recently, Chinese policy historically, for more than 10 years, we have the policy to control on the cap of energy use for each provinces. But new policy said if you do more for the green power, this will not to be included in the cap for energy. If some provinces they have more green power generation, they can go ahead with their energy use. So far, together with just 2 weeks ago, we have a national policy framework for carbon peaking and carbon neutrality, together with the several sectors policy. I think China is on the way to go to the peaking and also to go to carbon neutrality. Actually, the year for the peaking and the carbon neutrality doesn't matter, because I believe China can do much better job than we commit. This is also emphasized by the president several times. We announced that, then we must do that. It doesn't matter whether it's pushed by the other country or not. This is what we want to do. So this is the meaning for China. I think for Asia countries, we have a common future. For example, Japan and China should work, and Korea maybe work much more closely because we are technology leading countries. If we make the technology transition, I believe this can change the future for Asia and the world. I look for maybe our future, our common future together. We should have more close collaboration among countries in Asia. Thank you very much. I finish here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Johnson. I think you already answered the following question, but yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. The insightful the comment, and yeah, it's really good to know that this clear signal from Ipcc have some impact, or some also was already sent to the Chinese the government. And also, it is good to know that several additional policy and measures are already introduced to achieve what the government already pledged. So it's really good progress, I think. Yeah, and also I'd like to ask the same question to Professor Takamura regarding the Ipcc, the message. How did you see that the Ipcc message was actually sent, received in Japan? And
thank you. First of all, thank you very much, I just for the inviting me to speak here, and I'm very happy to be with the Tamura-san and also Johnson in this panel. So, in replying to the question posed by the Tamura-san, I think the maybe the most influential message of the Ipcc of 6 Working Group 1 is actually the first sentence of the Tamura-san's presentation. That is, somehow it is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. Maybe for the first time in the Ipcc report, without any doubt that the human activity, caused the global warming of the climate system, and also the ocean and land. I think that is quite the big heading in the journal and the media when the Ipcc AR6 published. So I think with the experience that the Japanese people have so far, especially during the couple of years, we have a lot of flooding and extreme weather. So I think this report message of the Ipcc 6 report actually provide some evidence to assure our feeling or sentiment, in face of the extreme weather that actually we see quite increasingly. So I think that is the first, the most maybe the attracted or message by the Japanese people and media. But in the policy dimension. I think the influence is not so clear in my view, but definitely we have to look into the couple of most important message from the IPCC, which is actually the Tamura-san mentioned that of course, Japan has a long-term goal, which is the climate neutrality by 2050, which is almost corresponding to the 1.5 degrees long-term goal under the Paris Agreement, if I could say. But still, to achieve this 1.5 degree under the Paris Agreement, it is clear from the IPCC report that we have to reduce the greenhouse gas emission as much as possible in coming decade. So in light of the carbon budget, we could not, consume out the carbon budget. So for doing so, I think this decade is quite critical. That is that maybe the one most important message that the policymaker in Japan have to look at. That is my answer.
Thank you very much, Professor Takamura. Okay, so yeah, and then I would like to move on to the next set of questions. That means the impact or outcome of this COP26. How this new outcome mean for China, Japan, and other Asian countries. As I mentioned in my presentation, Glasgow Climate Pact requested party to revisit and enhance as necessary their 2030 emission reduction target along with that Paris Agreement goal by the end of this next year. So, Jan-san, you already mentioned that new policy measure introduced recently in China to implement what Chinese government already pledged. So, but do you see, what your view on that China will should respond to this request? And do you see any room for China to increase their ambition of climate action? That means China's emission reduction pledge. So, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very hot topic, but just like what I said, this the policy making was made based on the research support. Right now, so many studies in China still say China can peak before 2030. Some research teams said earlier. So it's right now from the research viewpoint, it's difficult to get a very strong consistency to say for them peaking before 2025 or something like that. But just like what I mentioned about, so far the policy itself is very good, because policy sometimes means the long-term target. The policy also, for me, the most important thing means is what we are doing this year and next year. That's the reason why China's, if you look at what happened for this year, China's electric car selling will go something like around 3 million electric cars this year. Last year, only 1.2 million. And many people believe next year the electric car will double. So maybe by 2025, something around 80% of car selling will be electric car. If such kind of situation from the current policy supporting for electric car, for solar PV and wind, for nuclear, and also for industry transition, we are on the way. Because China's policy making is not very good at the long-term target. Chinese always give long-term target in the qualitative way, not the very quantitative way, because they didn't worry about if we say some target, we must reach that. It's not something like that. That's the reason why from the current policy, I'm quite happy with that. From the long term, for example, whether China peaking CO2 emission before 2030, which year should peak? For me, I think it's okay. If you look at today's policy, they are on the right way. So I'm not sure. Maybe from the top operational viewpoint, maybe he can say something more. But right now, the target is already good enough for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Johnson. Then next question, same question to Professor Takamura. What is your view on how Japan will and should respond to this request? I mean, the request to update, revisit the 2030 target. And do you see any room for increasing the ambition of Japan's emission reduction target?
So, as you know, that our cabinet just approved that officially the international NDC and with the backing policy and measures, so that it may be not felt easy to revise the target number. But still, I think I see this. There is a value of the visiting the target and also the supporting policy measures, because of course we have quite a whole menu to achieve the 2030 target, which is the 46 to 50% reduction. By 2030, below the 2013 level, but still, we might have a possibility or room for accelerating the speed of introduction of policy and measures. And also, for instance, in Glasgow, there emerged that big world, the global methane collaboration that is often miss out, if I may, from the policy and measures in Japan, so that maybe we might have some room, even though there is no revision of the target number itself, but still there I see that it is worthy to revisit again what is the appropriate policy measures, and there is room of accelerated measures, especially about the coal power sector. Our new strategic energy plan expect that the 19% of the coal-fired plant in the total power generated in 2030. But I understand that the current policy only assure that the achievement of the 26% in the total power generated. So how we can fill out this gap to make the NDC achievable, and also we have to consider that how we phase down or phase out after 2030. So that we need definitely some kind of medium and long-term plan to phase down or phase out of coal-fired plant from our power system. So that I think revisit then it's quite worthy for Japan to do so.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think for every country, that's not easy to revising, updating, or enhancing the emission target every year. But it's because of this urgency of the climate crisis. This is very tough political request. But we have to think about how we can respond to this kind of request. So in this coming decade, I think not only China but Japan, but all other countries seriously think about increase their ambition of climate action. So I think this is a huge room for the cooperation and the information exchange, and especially for the researcher among us, is really critically important to think about how we can contribute to this policy making, providing some scientific knowledge and that kind of things. So, having said so, I'd like to conclude this session. And thank you very much, Jan-san and Takamura-san, for your valuable comment on this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Takamura-san. Good talk with you.
Yeah, me too.
ご登壇者の皆様、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. We now conclude Plenary 2 session.